Today marks the 65th anniversary of the founding of North Korea, and I guess it really comes as not a big surprise that we don't know much about Kim Jong Un, North Korea's leader. Well, joining me now is John Delury, who's a professor at Yonsei University in Seoul, to give us some insight into Kim's leadership. Hi, John. So, you know, about a year and a half in now let's start with the economy, and about a year and a half in now to Kim's leadership. What really do we know about his economic policies?
Well, one thing he's done is he's articulated a shift from military defense emphasis toward an emphasis on economic development, and that's one of the more positive things that we've seen. He's articulated that in terms of the general slogan of the country has moved away from something called the military first policy. And now Kim Jong Un is talking about a simultaneous development of the nuclear program, but at the same time developing the economy as a whole, the people's economy or civilian economy. And there have been a lot of policy experimentations as well as leadership changes that back that up. So the reports on the ground that I get are that there's a continued push at a kind of entrepreneurialism that's growing at the grassroots in North Korea, and then there are also some promising policy experiments at the higher levels.
Okay, and we certainly noted that Kim took quite a strong, hard line on the nuclear issue coming as he became leader. But what do we know today about has he succeeded in consolidating his power inside the country?
Well, assessments are mixed, but you know, so far it would seem he's consolidating pretty well. I mean, formally speaking, he's moved into all the positions he should. He's surrounded by many of the people, including, of course, the family members who were there for his father's reign. But then there have also been changes of power, particularly in the military, and that's something really you should expect to see. If the new leader doesn't have control, then no one's going to change. So in a way, you could argue there's been about the right mixture of stability and change that suggests that his position is consolidated.
Okay, and in terms of engaging with the outside world, he's certainly had an odd choice of Dennis Rodman to engage. It seems like Dennis Rodman has extraordinary access to Kim. What do you make of all of that?
Yeah, it's hard to make out. I was in North Korea myself earlier in the year with a delegation, including Eric Schmidt of Google. And, you know, Kim Jong Un didn't have time to meet Eric Schmidt, but now he's spent a lot of time with Dennis Rodman. So it is a strange choice. And, of course, it's going to make people question his leadership. You know, looking at the reports on this second trip, it reminds me of what Karl Marx said, that things happen in history twice. The first time as tragedy, the second time as farce. And in terms of there being any diplomacy on one key issue, which is getting an American citizen out of North Korea, this trip was pretty much farcical, as Rodman sort of promised he might do something. But then as he came out, yelled at journalists in Beijing, well, that's up to Obama and Hillary Clinton, who's, of course, no longer Secretary of State. So the whole thing was a bit farcical.
Okay, and when we look at, I mean, how would you kind of sum up the direction that Kim is headed? I mean, would you say that the rest of the world it's more promising than it's been in the past compared to, you know, the leadership under Kim Jong Il, or would you say we're about the same in terms of progress?
Well, there have been no breakthroughs. As I mentioned, on the economic side, there are some good signs. No particularly good signs on the nuclear side toward denuclearization. You know, I think the key issue is this is a young guy. He's probably around 30 years old. And if his power consolidation works, he's likely to remain in charge of this country for potentially decades. So I think the key issue is to think in the long term and think about how to shape him in a better direction, both for the North Korean people and for the region. And I think along those lines, external engagement is very important. It's important we have serious people meeting and talking with Kim Jong Un. If all of this is left to the Dennis Rodman trips of the world, then that's likely to lead to less promising results.
Okay, thanks very much. John Delury joining us from Seoul. For more on that story, you can go to WSJ.com. I'm Deborah Kahn.